And welcome to the QCast. This is season 4, episode 5. Already the 5th episode of the new year. This has been a lot of fun, a great start to the season. And it's not often that you get a chance to speak with the head coach from a national championship team, but that's what we're going to do today. Really excited to have Juli Fulks here from Transylvania women's basketball. Juli, it is a wonderful time of year. So you guys are coming off a national championship, but here we are in October with another season right around the corner. How are you guys doing? How's your team doing?
Well, Bob, first off, thanks for having me. It's been obviously just the last few years have been a really fun ride, and we're looking forward to this one. I think all of the celebration pieces 2 weeks ago, our team got their rings, which was, for me, outside of the game, actually the biggest highlight of anything we've done, kind of postseason celebration. And so, we're in it. The NCAA changed the rules this year, and so we
Right.
could used several of the practices before, and we have 6 of those done. And they're excited. They're ready for the season. They're already chomping at the bit.
With the new practice rules, the season length rules, coaches have done that different ways. I think the most common I've heard is kind of taking 4 weeks and just doing 2 practices a week for those 4 weeks. How have you used the new rules?
Yeah, we spread it out over 3 weeks. I think personally, I couldn't wrap my head around starting any earlier than that. We wanted them to get comfortable in school and kind of get that piece settled for especially the freshmen. And so we did 3 the first week and then 2 last week. And then we're going to actually start on Friday. So we're going to use a couple of the days on Friday. And so that it'll feel like Friday is actually our first day. And then we're just going to roll from there.
That's cool. Yeah, I think it's going to help a lot of teams hit the ground running this year with that little head start. Want to talk about a lot of things related to last season, but also this season. But just kind of going back at the end of your 22 season, you guys lost in the Elite Eight, and I was reading an article that you guys kind of got together and you had a couple sayings that you came up with, and one was and what for the last season, and one was Texas to Texas because you knew you were starting the season. I believe it was at UT Dallas's tournament,
We did.
correct?
Yes. Yep.
And then you knew that the season culminated at American Airlines Arena in Dallas. But the other one you had that I really like was Joy in the Journey. Talk me through what that joy was of that journey last season that culminated in a national championship. What was the journey like for you and your women?
Yeah. No, both of those phrases ended up have meant a lot to our team. And when you add your new phrase, you never really know if they're going to, take off, stick. And the joy and the journey really came out of the year before. When we were 27-1, our team had a lot of external things that they were battling. And every day we came to basketball, it was just such a highlight for all of us. And we'd had a big turnover the year before, so we honestly didn't know were we going to be good, bad, average. And then we kept winning, and things kept happening off the court that nobody could control, and we kept winning. And when that season ended in the Elite Eight, obviously we were unbelievably disappointed,
Right.
but also when we looked at that collective year, we had just had so many good moments as a team together that when I was thinking about the next season, I didn't want them to lose that daily love for the game and being together because lots of people had these external expectations. And to be fair, we knew we had the talent to be really
Sure.
good. And so we had talked about it a lot as a group that we wanted to keep that mentality that really came out of COVID, that it's just that reminder of how lucky you are to be on the court together, to be able to do the things that we had always, maybe taken for granted. And we weren't going to let a loss, kind of upset the cart because we hadn't lost in a long time.
Right.
And so really, I wanted them to be a little bit mentally prepared that if we lost, it was not the end of the world, not the end of our goals. And then, the weeks just kept rolling on without losing, which was obviously a really fun outcome.
Well, you're a Division III person at heart. You played at Capital, and this is your 10th season at Transylvania. Do you feel like Division III student athletes appreciate the joy of the journey potentially more than some other levels? Is there, I don't know, better perspective, or kind of what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually think at my core, college students are college students. And so whatever their athletic ability in relative to whatever level they played at. Obviously, we're playing, the members of our team had lots of opportunity at lots of
Yeah,
different levels. And for, specific reasons chose Transylvania, and that's worked out really well. And so I guess I really want to believe at my core that the culture that we've created could transcend any level because,
sure.
ultimately, I really believe organizational culture is the same whether you're on Wall Street, whether you're Division One, whether you're professional sports. Creating excellent and high achieving cultures have so many of the same, pieces and fundamentals that, I think I am a Division 3 at my core. I love this division, have had and really appreciate different parts. But I would also like to believe that, some of this fundamental stuff would transcend to anything.
Yeah, it's a great point, and we'll talk about culture as we kind of go into this. You mentioned recruiting and kind of opportunities at higher levels. All of the top Division 3 programs across all sports tend to have student athletes that turn down opportunities somewhere else. Division 2 scholarship, NAI. In some cases, it could be Division 1. What what is it, Julie, that's allowing you guys to attract that caliber student athlete? Because clearly your roster last year was loaded with them. This year will be no different. What's the key to bringing someone in that's got an opportunity at a higher level?
Well, to start, Transylvania is an unbelievable university. And, I think that just creates an automatic appeal for our players, for our parents. As a basketball institution, it is so well known. On the men's side, um, Don Lane, his name is on the court. He has held basketball camps that almost every house all of us go into, whether we're recruiting volleyball, basketball. If you're in Kentucky, one of those parents has gone to Transylvania basketball camp. It's
Right.
just almost a given. And so there is already nothing that we have done. There's already a great love for Transylvania basketball in and the school in the state. It's the oldest institution in the state. It became an institution, was still part of the Virginia land grant. And so there is just tremendous history that I can take no credit for. And then since we've come there, I think the piece that we have been able to demonstrate and explain to families is we're really helping and striving that our athletes have a very well-rounded experience. We want them to be great basketball players, but we want them to be great students and develop that way and be great leaders and future professionals. And I think we've done a good job over the time of really being able to present how we do that, what that looks like in Lexington. And so families have felt like, hey, this ends up being the best place for my daughter collectively, not in a silo of just basketball or, one of those other factors.
Yeah, that's really well said. You guys clearly have great things to offer. The culture, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about your team. When you look back at last season, 33-0 and 18-0 in the league, the run through the tournament, you had to go through a incredibly hostile national semifinal game. So for those that remember, the national championship was in Dallas, and the semifinal game you had to play in Hartford, Connecticut against, was it Smith? You faced
Yes.
Smith,
Yep.
like a Smith home game.
Smith home game for sure.
And I mean, let's just talk about that game for a second. The environment there, it had to have felt like a road game. So
It
talk about
absolutely
that.
did.
Talk about the environment in getting through the Smith game.
Yeah. To our players' credit, they are the type of player that when they get in a challenge, they are not fearful, they are inspired. And I think that is a personality trait that really does produce champions because they have played in so many big games and some big games off in other places. We've had some big challenges. We took the team 2 years ago to Canada and played a bunch of Division 1 type teams. And anytime they go into a big environment, they're the type that the bigger environment, the better they perform. And I've always loved that about this group because they're at their best when they're underdogs or perceived underdogs, which really hasn't been that true in a while. But there are moments that they get a chip on their shoulder and they rise to the occasion. And so when we went into that game, we knew it was going to be a rowdy atmosphere. Um, and we owe our league a little bit. We've played in some rowdy atmospheres where we've had some student sections that were pretty opinionated and eventful, and that's just part of the game. And those moments they really enjoy. And so that part I actually thought was going to provide a little bit more energy. The night before at the banquet, the other team and well deserving, player of the year, coach of the year. But I knew our team when they have to sit there and listen through that stuff,
Right.
they do take it a bit personally, and I know that just kind of adds to their fuel.
I'm just curious. I vote on in the top 25 on the men's side, and so I regularly hear little jabs from people, all in good fun, that my vote has fueled somebody if I put someone 3 versus 1. If I recall, on the women's side last year, I don't think you were ever ranked number one until the final poll. I believe CNU
Yeah.
was number one and you were number two in the national championship game. Was there any chip on the shoulder provided by the voters that decided you were never the number one team last year? I'm just curious.
Yeah, ironically, I would have thought that added a little extra fuel, and for whatever reason, that was the piece they just kind of accepted. Um, the thing I thought that probably gave them a little bit of a fight last year was, the constant conversation about strength of schedule. And their argument in their defense, the year before we had played one of the best strengths of schedule in the country. And we brought back the same team. And
Right.
so, in scheduling in Division 3, it's really challenging.
Yeah.
And so there's only so much that we can do sometimes because of home games versus road games. And so that piece, I think, kind of just kept egging them on that was what was that was what everybody just kept talking about with them, and nobody paid attention to the fact that the year before it was
Right.
this unbelievable schedule at Tufts and John Carroll and all of these teams that were ranked in the top 25 just one after another. So I think for whatever reason, you never know again what's going to kind of be the thing that
Sure.
that grinds them. With the top 25 thing, our take has always been, hey, we're pretty grateful to be there. And, we just always said, hey, we want to be one at the end. And so however this plays out,
Sure.
we can't control it. We knew Christopher Newport was also really good. And so, that was just another added piece. But for whatever reason, it wasn't the ultimate driver like some other things were.
In that national championship game, CNU battled back, and I remember there were 2 free throws, maybe a minute and a half left by Madison Kellyan, and then you get a bucket, I think, to go ahead for good. I think Dacia hits something in the lane to put you up
Yeah.
a couple. Like, what was that? The final 2 minutes of that game must have been an absolute grind. It was a low scoring game. Like, what was that like, closing that game out and seeing your
Yeah.
student athletes respond?
The year before, for whatever reason, we have historically always been a good free throw shooting team, always. And the last 2 years, nobody on our team would be like, that is what we are hanging our hat on. And so heading into the postseason this year, we flipped the script a little bit and started doing everybody 100 free throws a day. For no other reason, we knew they were good shooters, and sometimes weird confidence things happen, and then you start believing this reality. And so heading into the postseason, it was just every day everybody came in before, after practice, got your 100 free throws, um, which we'd never done before, and that kind of reps or extensive reps. But we knew they were going to come down to some close games, um, and so that, ironically, so if you looked at the last 2 seasons, I would have never been the coach heading in down the final stretch, being like, "Hey, this is going to go play out exactly how you thought it was going to play out." However, on the flip side of that game, I really believe that that team is, and not that they had many last year, but they really do thrive when the screws tighten. And at Smith the week before, they went on a run and they cut it to 5. And forget Maddie Kellyan comes down and we kind of set a pretty deep ball screen, and She steps back, hits the three, and then looks over like, "Hey, was that okay?" Like they just don't even, they don't register on some levels. When the moments get bigger, they get calmer. And I thought for them in the last 2 minutes offensively, it got back to tie game because we did not play well for a stretch and we missed a bunch of threes. And we talked in the last time out, saying we want to be very aggressive at the rim. Like, let's just make sure everything happens at the rim. And Deja got that great look. We hit all the free throws. But any other game, I probably would have been considering, hey, what are we going to do if we miss? And I kid you not, hand a Bible, I never once thought there was any chance that we were missing any of those free throws. Never even once started planning with them what would happen if we missed. Just felt unbelievably confident it was going to play out exactly how we had planned.
I'm curious your opinion, what the experience is like. I'm sure it was incredible. Usually, the Division III Final Four is at one location. The four teams come there. Normal setup. Every several years, there's one of these cool opportunities
Yeah.
where Division I, II, and III have a championship under one roof, which you guys got to be part of. Did you enjoy that experience? Because the flip side of it is some people would say, well, I don't want Division III to be the warm-up game for the D2 and the D1 games. I would think it's a pretty darn cool experience to play in that kind of arena, in that environment. What was that like?
Well, it was unbelievable. We always thought the one thing we always said we could only win one. That was the one to win, and go to, because the joint experience for anybody who would have a negative view, they just need to be in it.
Right.
There's nothing like it. To have all of the exact same things. The first night you get there, everybody is at the same banquet party event,
Yeah.
and doing, and has all the same access to all the media. When you get to do all the things with CBS, to be on the jumbo screen, to play in America. I think that's the first one where they actually played it all in the same building.
Yeah.
I think the one in Indianapolis, where was the other one
I
at?
believe there was one
Yeah,
the men did it in Atlanta, and you're right, it
yeah,
was a different facility.
yeah. And so for the women in Indy, so to be able to play in American Airlines Arena the first time they came on the court, with all the branding and signage for Transylvania, there was nothing like that experience. And then to celebrate Title IX, Maddie Kellyan got to be, in the box for the Division I game.
Wow.
Dr. Jill Biden, so things like that just were unique and different. Our team they had the best experience. I was a huge believer. It's always been asked to me in the negative. I loved the 12-day break that we had. It gave us a chance to get all of our families there, get all of our fans
Yeah.
there, to really celebrate this team. It also gave us a chance to figure out how in the world to beat Christopher Newport and all of their Captain Chaos defense is a legitimate problem.
Right.
And so if you would have seen us the first 3 days, it would have been like Transy loses by 20. Um, so that extra 12 days just gave us all the time to prepare. And when we went to Dallas, we told them, we are here for the basketball. I never worried about letting them enjoy it and that they wouldn't be ready for the game. That's just not this team. They take both sides seriously.
In the aftermath of the championship, you got to do a lot of cool things. The White House.
Yeah.
So so in June, you guys get to participate in, I think it was College Athlete Day, where they had a number
Yeah.
of the championship teams and people. What was that experience like?
Oh, when we got that email, I was actually driving to one of my nephew's track meets in Northwest Ohio, and pulled in, got the email, and immediately had a call with our athletic director. And this is what I've appreciated about Transylvania since I've been there. It's a place that just tries to figure out, yes, how can we? And so, immediately, our athletic director, Dr. Holly Shealy, who's awesome, she was like, let's figure this out. Our president, Dr. Brian Lewis, he was on board. The board of directors were on board, and that was a very quick turnaround, and we were able to get all of our players there. Our graduate Madison Kelly, and she's playing at Tennessee Tech. Super grateful for their staff. They let her come back and go with us, and so to have the whole team there, one more time in a celebration, one we didn't expect, and then to be at the White House with a bunch of other, national champions, and to have that experience, and then all the just fun tourist things that we got to do with them for
Sure.
2 days. that was awesome. I'm so grateful for everybody who allowed that to happen, and an administration who valued the national champions for every sport and not just football and men's and women's basketball. So it was awesome. What a great day.
It looked, saw the photos, read some articles, looked incredible. Want to talk about that team from last year, and in this era of the COVID fifth year, which we're still in, it's always complicated to figure out who's coming back, who's coming in. Let me just run through. You guys played about like a 7-person rotation for the most part at the end in the national championship game. I mean, 7 that played, let's say 12 or more minutes.
Yeah.
I want to just check in. I think I have this right. So Maddie Kellyan, who was incredible. I'm 15 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. She was named an All-American. She was named the HCAC Athlete of the Year. A million other things bestowed on her, which she deserved all of them. I believe that she is not back this year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
She moved on?
Yeah, so Maddie graduated. Maddie, probably her two biggest awards. She was the Elite 90 winner. So at the
Yeah.
national championship, she had the highest GPA, and
Yeah.
that's honestly kudos to her because she is a physics major with a minor in math, biology, and computer science.
Oh,
So you could not look at her and say that she had padded her academic stats. So that was her first award, which was exciting. And then she was the national championship MVP. And so she was the one of the seniors who we knew early was going to graduate. She had an interest in medical physics and computer science. She had torn her ACL, so the difference from her compared to the other seniors was she had 2 years of eligibility left, and so had talked to her early about using those 2 years to get her next degree for free, and if we could find the right place. And Tennessee Tech absolutely is the right place. I think from a culture wise, they have a very similar approach to how they do things. They won the league last year, and
sure.
so that has been great. So she is the one who graduated, and obviously a very big piece. And then I think we probably got down to 8 in our rotation in the last 2 games, and so the other 7 are returning. And so there is a lot of other really talented players. I mean, I think the strength in our starting lineup last year was anybody went from 10 to 20 on any night. And so while Maddie did get a lot of the big awards, it was a collective effort, and partly because she also had a lot of really good teammates that you couldn't help
Yeah.
off of.
Some of the other cast, just statistically that jumped out from last year. Kennedy Stacy is returning, 5'7"
Yeah.
guard, 14 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Daisha Thornton, 12 points, 10 rebounds per game. She's back, 5'11" forward. It's her 5th year. Lakin Ball, 10 points, 5 rebounds. Sydney Wright, 7 points, 4 rebounds. I thought last year Emily Teal played important minutes for you throughout the season off the bench. Kennedy Harris, you really you just lose from the rotation. You just lose Maddie Kellyan. You got to feel thrilled with the nucleus now that you enter this new season with.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't be sad about it. That's for sure. 2 years ago, to be honest, one of the reasons we had one of the best strength of schedules in the country is we played a lot of teams that I thought were going to graduate everybody. And then, we get to that part of the year and nobody graduated anybody. And so the entire core for Tufts came back, and the entire core for John Carroll came back, and Piedmont, like all these people
Right.
came back. And so that's been the piece, I think, for a couple years. When we got to the postseason, Trine had their entire roster back and Hope had their whole roster back. And so that has been a kind of the unknown piece. And for the first 2 years, I mean, we were very fortunate. Transylvania was one of the very few schools that offered everybody a free 5th year if they stayed enrolled full time during COVID. So the entire institution was offered that. And so
Well,
we've had lots of sports have players take them up on that. And I thought that was an unbelievable gesture because they all lost that experience for that year in the classroom and out of the
yeah.
classroom, and internships and study abroad, all the things they couldn't do that now they have the opportunity. And so, going into last year, the other seniors, they were able to pick up extra majors, extra minors. Um, and so it really worked out well for the other 3 to come back and do a 5th year. And then obviously on the basketball court, they bring a lot of strengths to the table. I think, all of their numbers, they have great numbers. They actually could have much better numbers, but they do a great job sharing the ball. We had, I think, almost 26 or 27 of the 33 games everybody played. Our entire team played. And so they're really good at sharing the ball and sharing minutes when we could. And I think that's helped us, kind of annually be able to compete the next year after we graduate.
I know that you guys have a good recruiting class coming in, and it's too early to pin down any specific names and things. But are there any transfers coming in this year? Are there any newcomers? Do you have some newcomers that you expect to be in the middle of your varsity rotation by
Yeah.
January 1st or so?
Yeah, so we don't have transfers, and for whatever reason, that's just never kind of been our necessarily MO.
Yeah,
But our three freshmen, I think, are all really talented. And so, it's going to be an interesting mix because we have several, last year's freshman class had a lot of talent that in other years would have played more minutes for
sure.
sure. Um, and so we have this underclassmen core that, to be honest, I have to figure out how to get on the court in some way, in some role, because they're very talented. They bring a lot to the table. We are going to have a massive graduation this year. We're going to graduate six, um, or I guess five, and that's going to be a huge turnover. And
Sure.
so we need to do a good job this year, also preparing for next year. But that we have a lot of underclassmen that can add different things, and so I think it'll probably be much more that night. What do we need? Do we need to be bigger and add a little more size and rebounding? Do we need a little bit better guard play? And they all have some different strengths that really they're all going to find their way on the court in some way, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
You talked about schedule a couple times and kind of strength of schedule and all that. I think it's cool. You guys have two exhibitions that you kick things off with.
Um,
You play Ashland, and then you've got a game at Eastern Kentucky before you get into your opener, which is November 12th at DePaul. There's a lot of, I guess, philosophies on what to do with that exhibition scrimmage time, but it seems like in playing Ashland and Eastern Kentucky, you get a great experience and great learning out of that. Talk about the decision to play those two exhibition games.
Yeah. Well, with going to DePaul at DePaul, I mean, you are well aware there are
Yep.
not many people that have won at DePaul for decades. I am aware. In fact, I remember as a college athlete going there and losing. Um, and so I have unbelievable respect for what they do and how they do it. And we have scrimmaged them multiple times since I've been here. They are so physical. And, given how many we were returning, I wanted to get the returners' attention right away. We
Sure.
needed things that excited them. And, I had talked about, they love a good challenge. We played EKU 2 years ago, and that was a really fun experience. We held the national, the flag with Ashland that day. And who knew flag training took so long? It was about 2.5 hours. And so during that time, our teams actually, I mean, they stood right across from each other for a very long time, and the coaching staffs. And so that day we actually had a lot of conversations. And, I mean, it's just two teams that were both undefeated. And then during the summer, I sat down besides Coach Pickens for Ashland, and we were just kind of talking about things and realized we could make it work. And we found a spot in the middle because it's a pretty far drive between the two of us. And so just really excited. I think, lots of teams zone them. And so she's pretty excited about getting a team that's obviously going to zone where that's not a secret anymore. And so I think that's good for them, and they're going to press and be really big. And so I just really wanted that physicality
Yeah.
in some pretty big matchups. And honestly, my goal is not to go in and win. My goal is that we get ourselves ready for 2 weeks later.
Right.
That's always our goal in the preseason. And so we are going to play people. Our underclassmen are going to get thrown into the fire and make sure they're ready too. And so those things matter to us. That those will be fun. But we're really getting ready for games in November that have a pretty big impact on the end of the year.
And the way Division Three works, as you know really well, is a game on November 12th counts the same as a game the last weekend of February. So that DePaul game that's your first game. It ends up being like enormous. At the end of the
Yes.
year,
Yeah.
I guarantee we're going to be looking back at that result, whichever way it goes, as being big for one of the two teams.
Yeah.
Wanted to talk about a couple things just with style of play. I mean, you guys held opponents to 47.5 points per game last year. That it's just ridiculous. Um, what are your defensive philosophy or defensive keys? Not to give away the trade secrets, but I mean that doesn't happen on accident. I don't care what kind of athletes you bring in. Um, how do you teach defense, and how do you guys go about playing defense?
Yeah, I think on both ends, I mean, we are a team that values rebounding. That is who we have grown into. That's how our coaching staff has grown into it. And over all the years, my best teams, in big games were shooting 40 to probably 43%, and that's probably a good night. And so the most likely outcome is still we miss and there's a rebound. And our, best defensive teams, you're 32 to 40%, the most likely outcome is rebounding. And so I think a while back, we really flipped the script on both sides of the ball. How do we build out from rebounding versus have it be the random outcome at the end that you hope goes your way? And that's a different philosophy for sure. And people have all sorts of thoughts when I talk about it from that direction. But our defense, whether we were in man or zone, was really built to when they shoot, it's still probably going to be a 60% chance they miss. So how do we always win that part?
Right.
Um, and then what the difference really between I think this team and the last couple teams is, Deja Thornton and Kennedy Stacy are just monsters on the
Yeah.
boards. They
Yeah.
do it differently. Kennedy just used pure power, willpower, willpower and speed. And Deja is just an unbelievable athlete. Can grab the rim and is really hard to contain on both ends. And then you add in another, the rest of the cast who's also really good at doing what they do. And I think really the difference between this team and some of the other good teams is they are just, I don't know the math of it, but just 5% better on the boards, 10% better. And they come up with a couple that are just really key. And that has been a huge point. In the national championship game, we shot the ball terribly. But from the 3-point line, we got nearly every one of our misses,
Right.
minus the couple that we managed to airball out of bounds, which was unfortunate. And so I think that's kind of on defense, they're really good at making you make tough shots. And so when you have to do that possession after possession after possession, and we're not going to foul you and we're not going to give you a second shot, it becomes pretty challenging to score, and get above 50.
And you're sending everyone, all five, you're sending to the offensive glass, correct?
Yeah,
Like you
we do.
want
Yeah.
everyone offensive rebounding, right?
Yeah, we do. And that's, I mean, I guess it's a little bit of a misnomer in the fact that, if somebody's shooting a three, we're not asking them to run after the ball. We want them to believe they made it. But where it is true, there's nobody there's nobody who has a job of getting back.
Gotcha.
We like to our mentality. If we had another phrase, it's stay until you score. We are going down there to score, and if it's one shot or four shots, that is our goal. And so obviously we have to be really good at defensive transition, and we do a lot of things to be very good at defensive transition. But I think we are good at putting the pressure on the other team that if you want to try to run on us, hopefully you're having to do that after we score.
And you also have a focus, I believe, on not fouling. I mean, as
Yeah.
simple as it sounds, I mean, obviously, biggest percentage shot, I assume, is a free throw. And
Yeah.
so, like, if you can prevent that, I'm just curious, like, what do you do to ingrain that in your team and actually put that in? It's easy to say it, like, let's not
Right.
foul, but how do you actually get the team to not foul as much as the next guy?
Yeah. Well, I think it's different things. And so positionally, how they foul ends up being very different. Kennedy Stacy, her primary job is to stop the ball in transition. And so how she might pick up fouls is very different than how the middle of our zone might pick up fouls. And so I think we do
Sure.
a pretty good job. They understand the math behind why we do it. And it's just what you said. The most efficient shot is a free throw. If you're trying to get a point per possession, it's pretty easy if you're going to the free throw line.
Right.
And especially with the rules now at 5 fouls, you're in the double bonus. And so that's just really adding to offensive efficiency. And so, we're really, we're pretty consistent in how we're teaching, each part of the zone. Hey, this is where you're going to get put on the spot. If you're the bottom outside of the zone, they're going to attack you this way. And so we're going to need time and space to kind of avoid those things. And, And so I think where it's sometimes interesting for fans is you'll see us give up a 13-foot shot where they look pretty open, and they are. And the onus is on the offense is to make that shot at a rate high enough to win the game. Because, we believe that if you miss that, we're going to get the rebound. We have inside position. We know we didn't foul you. And so you better make that shot.
Obviously, a lot of use of analytics. Analytics are becoming more and more common in every sport, but you really are deep into it. I don't know all the stuff behind the algorithm that you use, but can you just talk about how analytics come into play with your coaching staff and your program?
Yeah, I don't know the algorithm either.
But there is one.
There is
There's
one.
right.
I just really fortunate. So, uh, Dr. Tim Whitesel, he has been on staff now. This will be his 20th year that we've coached together. He is a fishery scientist. He is a mathematical genius, and he is a really great basketball teacher. And a long time ago, he just became really interested in why and how teams win mathematically. How does that compare to national averages? And he has, for a very long time, he sends me the information that we believe matters compared to our team and some different things that we do. And so that is a piece of kind of the game planning. And then on top of it, I just think there are some other really obvious pieces of math that our team understands. And, the first always starts with shot selection. We know how many, roughly 80 to 85 possessions a game, and that's kind of the pace we play. And we're the team that gets to choose what shot do we take. And so try to be really greedy about that piece and taking shots that, one are predictable for the offensive rebounding piece, and two are shots that we know that we can make.
Right.
Um, and so I think that, so there's some pieces like that. There's some pieces in the defensive game plan. So overall, I think, we have a staff of nerds that really all value the math piece. But I think really, though, still the hard part is figuring out what you think matters, doing it a way that your team can understand that is not overwhelming. And so while we know a lot of information, we're really only trying to get them to focus on 2 to 3 things each game that we're trying to take away that game to swing the numbers in our favor. Which, I thought there was an NCAA tournament game, one of the last few games this year, that he said, hey, we have to get 40% of our misses to win this game. That's what the math says. It is a direct cut. And while that's our normal number, this was a team that nobody was getting 40% of the misses on.
Right.
And so, for the entire time, we were just really, we always harp on offensive rebounding. And man, we were just on it every moment in practice, every moment in games. This matters, this matters, this matters, this matters. And we got over that threshold every quarter, and ended up winning that game. And those are the moments I think the team, they understand and believe it. And then they will do everything they can to execute it. And that, it's not just buy-in from the team, it's believe in. They really believe in what we're trying to accomplish. And I think as a coaching staff, when you're not having to battle that piece, where you can come up with a game plan and they're all on board collectively, that makes coaching a lot easier.
I got to get Tim Whitesel on the D3 Datacast. My friends, the Snyders, who fall in the nerd category. I say that
Yeah,
lovingly. They would love to talk analytics with your
yeah.
guy. I wanted to ask you just a couple more topics. How you got into coaching? Because I read somewhere that before you were at Lewis and Clark in Portland, Oregon, which you were the coach there before Transylvania. You were, if do I have this right, Columbus, Ohio Health Department in vector control. So, coach, well, I don't know
Yeah.
what vector control is. It doesn't sound like basketball, but tell me, like, how do you go from that to coaching?
Yeah. I think collectively, if you took our staff, we have the most non-natural way that everybody has got into coaching that's possible. I was a biology major, psychology minor, never planning on going to coaching. I did not have an ideal career. I played volleyball and basketball my first year, tore my ACL, retore my ACL my sophomore year,
Mm,
had to have another meniscus surgery after my junior year. And by my senior year, I'd never been hurt before. I was trying to figure that all out. And I just said, never mind, I'm going to study abroad in Australia. But during all that time, I'd always anticipated that I was going to have a career in the biological sciences and was figuring that out. And so early on in my career, I started working with the health health department, and vector control is a fancy way of saying mosquito control. It's when West Nile was coming to the United States. And then I also started working as a junior at a sleep lab, which was when sleep medicine was brand new in this country. And so when I graduated, I naturally just was full time with that company, and was just fortunate to get a job at a local high school and started there and realized I loved it. But that's kind of the theme of our whole coaching staff. Hannah Varell, who's one of our assistants, she was at Mizzou and played intramurals. And I have to tell you what, though, she should have played somewhere. She is still, man, when she steps on the court, she might still be the best player on the court. She's an unbelievable athlete, but a brilliant, brilliant mind. And she was an accountant and got a big job at one of the big four and did that for a few years and decided that wasn't for her and reached out to Hanover College and had helped with her high school and reached out to Hanover College in our league. And Tim Whitesel, he's a full-time fishing, scientist for fish and wildlife. And Lauren Bewley on our staff, she's a full-time firefighter. So we have her 2 out of 3 days. Coach Lee Pruitt is in every Hall of Fame in the state of Kentucky and played at UK. And
Wow.
Her daughter was on staff, and then her daughter got married and moved with her husband in Philadelphia. And so we stole her. And so, there is not the normal path to college coaching. But there's a consistent theme on our staff of, I appreciate that everybody really takes it from an educational standpoint. And so that is our common theme. There's a love of basketball, a love of education.
Sure.
And this is just how we get to do it. And we find creative ways to make it work.
Yeah, it's really cool. Just all the different backgrounds and personalities and that you have with just on the staff. Just a couple more questions. I wanted to ask about your community support. It's clear that you have things rolling there, and most importantly, you've got that community behind you, which is always an incredible thing for a Division III program to have going. Talk about the support you're getting from the community right now.
Well, and kind of what I talked about earlier. First off, as you know, I mean, Kentucky is a basketball state, and so that immediately helps me out. And we don't have football at Transylvania, and so we knew coming in basketball mattered, and I think obviously anytime you're winning, so I told you it's going to happen.
Yeah, coach is battling a cold, guys, and so she's
Yep.
grinding through this. Tough players make plays, and that's what's happening
Yeah.
right now. She's grinding.
And so, and they appreciate our players, I think, personality. They want to be the team that has the most fun and wins every night. And I think when people come to watch them from any part of the community, they immediately just get sucked in. In fact, every place that we played in the postseason, when we went to Hartford, when we went to Dallas, everybody that was interacting with our team, I mean, I felt like the proud parent. They were just saying so many kind things about who they were as people, how they interacted with them. And so I think that's a part of the community support, that they're just fun to watch and be around and watch compete, because they do enjoy it. They do it in the right way. They're selfless with the balls, but they're still fierce competitors. And so I think that's a big part. And then the consistency of the success. Last year was the 5th year that we won the conference and conference tournament. There's a really fun stat. The last time we lost a home conference game was in 2017.
I saw that.
So
Rose Holman in
Rose
2017.
Holman.
Wow.
I'm lucky I didn't get fired that day. And that was the day that we announced the bat as the new athletic logo. And so the entire crowd got new bat shirts.
Oh man.
We had, just all the branding, everything that went into that game, and us and the men lost.
It's a rough one.
It was a rough one. And I remember after the game, I apologized to the president and I apologized to our athletic director. And I remember saying, I'm like, I am going to really work to not lose again. And we kind of joke. And then I was like, okay, now we're 6 years later.
That's
December
incredible.
would be 6 years. We've graduated 2 classes, and it's a fun thing. Nobody wants to be the team that obviously has that end. It'll all good streaks are made to be broken. But we're going to keep grinding and trying to see how long we can keep that streak going.
Just one more question, then we'll wrap it up. But one of the things that I know you guys do, which is cool, and we've talked a lot of things that tie into culture here, but the dream door.
Yeah,
So I think that's a cool thing. Explain to the QCast viewers here what the dream door is and kind of what it means to your team.
yeah. Well, all good things are stolen. And so that is something, somebody had sent me something to read, and there was a Division I cross country team that was doing something kind of similar that was having a lot of success. And I really liked the concept. And so it started out of the year that we went 27-1, and in May term, we're able to do a leadership class. And so during that class, we just started talking about, I wanted them to just think about, what do they dream about? Like, what do they really dream about? Not what does, outside society or parents or family think that they should do? Like, what do they really want to do? And on the first time we met, we had them write it down, and then we just kind of re-talked about it every week for a month. And that was the first time we'd ever done it. And without talking about it, every one of them wrote win a national championship as one of their things, and they had to write down two or three things. Um, and so they're just on the back of my office door. So,
Cool.
we talk about them all the time. We remind them of them all the time. And, it was a risky decision. We didn't realize at the time, but we took them off the door, and we took them to us to the national championship game. And when we came in at the 9-minute mark, like we always do, each one of their cards was sitting on their chair,
Oh wow.
not knowing. And then, our entire team started crying.
Oh wow. That's
Um,
cool.
and it was a really powerful moment. And it was one of those moments, honestly, where it just felt, the whole 2 years, it kind of felt like fate was driving this, and this was going to go our way.
That's
And
awesome.
but not many teams take the court in the national championship with everybody like having tears stream down their face. And I remember we
Yeah.
looked at the coaching staff, and we're like, this is going to go one of the two ways. But it was just really cool for them to know. When we talk all the time, you get what you earn on the court. And we believe they had done the work to have that moment. And so for them to look back and say, we dreamed about this moment, and
Yeah.
now we have a chance, that was just really inspiring.
It is. That gives me goosebumps just to hear about it. That sounds so cool. Um, well, I tell you what. So, well, first for the QCast listeners, the only disclaimer on this interview was Julie said, I prefer to talk about my team instead of me, and so I didn't get as deep into Julie's background as I do with some coaches, and that's why I think you'll agree I stuck to that agreement,
You
right,
did. I
Coach?
appreciate that.
Okay.
They're way more interesting. They're way
Well,
more interesting.
I'll just I'll a few things on my end, and then I'm going to kick it to you for kind of any final thoughts and close us out. But incredible, what you've built is unbelievable, and this isn't one of those like 2 year things. This has been building up for now. This will be your 10th season at Transylvania, and the records over the years and what you've accomplished are incredible. I think more importantly, the organic way that you've done it, the building of the culture, the using analytics, the X's and O's around defense and rebounding, and all of these things just culminating into last year. You finally knock down that door, and you win a national championship. Kudos to you, to your staff, to your women. I mean, you guys are a shining example of what Division III is all about, Julian. I'll ask you to kind of close us out. There'll be people from Division III Nation that are tuning in. There'll be people from your fan base that'll be tuning in. What would you like to leave everyone with on the QCast here today?
Well, I appreciate the kind things you said, but as you know, this doesn't happen in a silo. And so, from our administration, our athletic department culture, our coaching staff. I laughed last week. I didn't feel well at practice, and it became very clear they didn't need me at practice. It's probably one of the things I'm very proud of. I remember reading Good to Great, and the piece they said is build a program that the leader can leave and it keeps going.
Yeah,
And I always took that to heart. And I'm a piece of it, but it's really a collective of players before that believed in this, that kept help building things further. The current group gets really a ton of credit. They're the ones that did all the work off in the off season. They've done all the hard work and putting. There's nothing harder than putting the team goal in front of personal goals. That's just the hardest thing. We do not have a culture that celebrates that. And the last year, those starters as freshmen, many of them had to sit and wait. And that's not popular these days. And so
Right.
I would say the credit just goes to a very large group of people that has this big goal that everybody's fighting towards. Um, and I'm just lucky to be a part of it.
Well, appreciate all your time, and I know that people will really love hearing from you. And there's people that are going to pick up a lot of things related to basketball and life in this conversation today. So this has been great. We'll be rooting for you guys as you kick off the season November 12th at DePaul, and looking for another awesome season. So, Julie, I really appreciate it, folks. That's Julie Fulks, the head coach at Transylvania. QCast Season 4, Episode 5. Coach, I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.